If you're looking for a bold take on Syracuse football, Brian Smith from Locked On the Portal is here to provide one. Brian, your take on Syracuse, who's suddenly surging on the trail and is becoming a name that everybody in the ACC's kind of looking around going, they're in on who? They're going after that kid. But you've got one take in particular. Why don't you share that take with the class?
Yeah, I think they'll get 7 players or more from the state of Florida. They've already
Mm.
got 3, and they might get Calvin Russell, who's possibly a 5-star wide receiver from none other than Miami Northwestern, one of the most famous high school football programs in the nation.
So you're telling me that the Syracuse Orange, who in recent memory have not even pulled a top 30 class, are going to walk into Florida State and Florida and heck UCF's and Miami's backyard and just walk out with 7 players. They've already got 3. But what exactly is shifting here for the Orange?
They won last year. They got 6 last year when they were building that class by winning, what was it, 6, 7, 8 games, whatever it was. But nobody thought they were going to win, go 500. And of course, at the end, they beat Miami after being down 21-0. That kind of
Nine
helped.
and three regular season bowl game victory is a
There
10
you
win
go.
campaign.
There you go. I mean, like nobody thought anything of Syracuse, myself included, because they just haven't been good for so long. But man, now all of a sudden it matters. And one thing that is obvious based on me interviewing Calvin on Sunday, somebody said, "Hey, what is it about Syracuse? They got all the buzz with you. What is it?" He goes, "I'll give you a simple answer." He goes, "Fran Brown." And that was it. Fran recruits the top prospects himself, along with his staff. Most head coaches hate recruiting. Fran loves it. If you do not build relationships as the actual head coach in today's society, you will not get the elite players. And to put it mildly, we're talking about a kid that can go to any school in the country pretty much, 6'4", 6'5", 190 pounds. The very first play of one-on-ones right in front of me, he catches a jump ball over a kid. He's just that guy. So everybody's got their own reasons. That's fine, but like it's just player after player after player. And again, they've got 3 kids committed already. Jagon Cooper, Jarius Rogers, guys that were coveted by the big 3, and they're still committed to Syracuse.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much talent in the state of Florida that
Sure.
inherently, just getting 6 or 7 or 8 players from the state might not be all that impressive if you're going after, the lowest rated recruits that are
Sure.
out there. But they're starting to swing with the Miami, Florida State, who I presume are the big 3 in your view for these sorts of kids. But here's what's even more impressive to me about the fact that Syracuse is just in this position for Calvin Russell, Brian. They just lost their wide receivers coach. He just got hired away by Oregon, and yet
Yeah.
Syracuse is still right there in the fold. How impactful was that first season? Is that what it's about, or is it about Fran Brown, as a recruiter, or is it both? And this is kind of the start potentially of Syracuse building themselves up because, as I mentioned earlier, this has not been a program. They're located in New York, which has got some kids, but it's not a California, Texas, Florida type of area. But they have not been a top tier recruiter. They have not even been a mid tier recruiter, quite frankly. And all of a sudden, they're just going toe to toe with Miami.
It is what it is, man. Like I think it's a combination. Winning helps. That never goes out of style. But it starts with relationships. They were building relationships last year before anybody thought they were any good, and they were getting kids on campus. And I remember then I'm like, what is going on? Like I'd met Fran. I'm like, I get it. Why kids like him. Super positive guy. But once they won games last fall, it solidified that chance. And let's throw in another little caveat. Their offense is exciting. They threw the ball around. Kids like that stuff.
Leading passing offense in the country.
Yeah, that does matter. Fran knew how to throw the ball. That certainly helped. The only thing left now is can they get over the hump and do it 2 years in a row because they're no longer the hunter, they are the hunted. That would solidify and get the kids that are committed to stick with them and maybe get Russell, maybe get some other guys, but they need to continue on that path. And I don't see why not because they're putting in the effort, and there's nothing wrong with that.
When Miami and other heavy hitters are going after a kid like Calvin Russell, do you give Syracuse a legitimate shot, or is it just newsworthy? I mean, it is newsworthy that they're in on a kid like that and they're a team to be considered, but is it a serious consideration, you think, from Russell's standpoint that, he could actually commit to Syracuse? Because to me, that would kind of ring similar vibes in my head to Tetaroa McMillan going to Arizona. He was down to Arizona and Oregon, and he chose Arizona. And many people, myself included, Oregon guy, said, wait a minute, he's going where? That program just won one game. I mean, they had a 12-game losing streak. What's going on? And that was a sign that Jed Fish was building the Wildcats into something really, really good. And I think Russell would, at least from a recruiting impact standpoint, have that same sort of impact if he were to go to the Orange.
And right now, if I had to pick, that's where I think he would go. There's another one.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
They're doing a good job. Now, for those that do not know, Calvin is a legit hooper. He wants to play basketball too. Syracuse, historically, that is an advantage. I mean, that place is nuts, the Carrier Dome, all that. Maybe that'll help them. But this, again, the two words that came out of Calvin's mouth, and I'm from 3 feet away, Fran Brown. And I'm like, okay, that's straightforward. I appreciate the honesty. And it was like just boom, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He thought that the best way to explain it was just giving the head coach, because he put so much effort into it. And he feels appreciated that Fran, not that other coaches don't at the head coaching position, but like he really tries to get to know him and put in the time. And I thought, you know what, that's going to sell with anybody. If you do that, you've got a better chance with any kind of line of work you're in. And recruiting is all relationships anyway. So do not be surprised when they get some more elite players out of Florida. Do not be surprised.
This would be something that will come up on the show again if Russell ends up committing to Syracuse, because that would be recruiting shockwaves and just turning people's heads going, he's going where? He's going to play for who exactly? But I'm glad you brought up the passing offense, because those sorts of things can become really identifiable traits for a school and the brand that they pitch to kids on the recruiting trail. Like, what do you think of with Ohio State? Their wide receiver U. Why? Because they keep recruiting, developing, and having wildly productive wide receivers that do things like win the Biletnikoff, get drafted in the top 10, or, it wasn't just, hey, we're Ohio State, we're going to go get Jeremiah Smith. It was the Chris Olaves, the Marvin Harrison Jr.'s, the Garrett Wilsons that, I'm sure factored into Smith's recruitment for him to say, yeah, Ohio State's a place I want to go because I know that I can get to that sort of level. Is that part of the consideration, you think, for Russell of, hey, if I go here and my ultimate goal is to make it to the NFL, I know I'm going to have the chance to put up some monster numbers?
I do believe so. He understands they're throwing the ball around. Calvin's a sharp kid. He's not stupid. He isn't going to go somewhere where they're going to run the ball down your throat and just that's the basic of the office. He's not doing that. He wants to go somewhere he's going to get the football. He's a dominant player in the Miami Public League. He's been a freak ever since he was a little kid. Everybody knew he was kind of next up. So he wants to get a chance to shine. Syracuse's offense for a receiver makes sense. You're 100% right.
Yeah, and that makes it even crazier going into the time machine a bit, Brian, that Calvin Johnson went to Georgia Tech while they were just running. They were not some air it out, throw the ball kind of offense. And that's arguably the greatest receiver the NFL has had in the last 20 years.
Yeah, I remember interviewing him. He was just a Georgia Tech fan. They just walked into that one. That's it.
Man.
That was it. Because every school in the country offered him.
Recruiting's wild. I wonder if he would go to Georgia Tech in 2025 if he were coming out of high school.
There might be an NIL discussion.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Is like that discussion might not have taken place as seriously or as above board back then, but certainly I'm sure someone came to him and said, "Hey, we'll throw a little cheddar your way."
I know some of those, and he still went to Tech.
Yeah, and he still went to Tech. Forever one of the craziest things that you ever hear on the recruiting trail. Brian Smith, Locked on the Portal. All your portal and NIL discussion over there. Great as always. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.